Hello everybody and welcome back to the WSL GT3 Championship as we home in on the second half of our season. It's the penultimate endurance round of our season tonight at the legendary Bathurst. Mount Panorama for 75 minutes of racing with just 4 rounds to go in this championship. It's getting very, very exciting indeed at one of the best racetracks in the world. My name is Ewan O'Leary. I'll be alongside Zach Sweeney here for the evening. Zach, welcome in. Good to have you here once again. And we were just discussing whether this is the best racetrack in the world, where it sits in that kind of debate. But what we certainly know is we're in for a fantastic show tonight.
Absolutely. I mean, you're literally climbing up a mountain, so it can't not be good, essentially, is Bathurst. It's historic, it's amazing, and in terms of Aussie motorsports, it's always up there, and in all motorsports as well, it's always up there in the conversation. I know Lewis McGlade loves Bathurst, and you can't not love it. It's, you know, obviously from a driver's perspective, a couple of drivers were like, yeah, I'm going to take a miss this week because I just can't get in tune with Bathurst. It's a very tricky circuit, so I guess from that standpoint, it is easy to sort of dislike it kind of, but from a spectating point of view, it's awesome. And hooking up a lap around Bathurst as well, there's nothing like it.
Absolutely, just over 6 kilometres in length. Of course, home to the 12-hour at the start of the year and towards the end of the calendar year as well, the Bathurst 1000, which of course is so famous for. But in between times, it's a fantastic venue for GT3 racing as well, which there isn't a lot of, too much apart from the 12 hour there. So lucky to have it in the virtual world. Let's have a look at the championship standings as we go into this race, because it is very interesting, and it's arguably even closer than it was before we headed into last week at Monza. Stuart Reynolds is the overall leader in the pro standings by 2 points out of Chris Chatterton, with John Williams 10 points back. John not going to be here tonight though, unfortunately. In fourth place, Hacken Lindmo ahead of Harry Wills, who's also not here. Taylor Lane is returning after taking a week off at Monza last week. Kai DL returning once more again, as along with Jason Dilworth, who had a fantastic time of things 1 week ago. Lucas Romano and Johannes Trout were still inside the top 10. Lars Devon, Hugo Houston, Jakob Schneider, Albin Kjellberg, James Pearson, Max Furtwängler, all outside the top 10. And all of those not on the grid here today either. In the Pro-Am driver standings, it's even closer, if that's possible, than in the pros. 3 drivers separated by just 8 points, with Ivo van der Linden the top of them. Louis Poubier just 1 point behind. Dean Timms in third, ahead of Jean Breitenbach. Then it is Timothy Vanderbroek. Thomas Pugh is sixth, ahead of Francois Perdraud. Then it's Marcel Breitenbach, who scored his first win of the season last week. Stuart Winers is in the 9th place, ahead of Jeremy de Boyver. Then it's Dino de Vlamink. Simon Dodd is 12th, ahead of Chris Thacker. Dirk Bouts is 14th, ahead of Mark Fleming, with Peter Lemkens and Ashraf El Haddad rounding out the 17 Pro-Am drivers. And finally, the AMs. No surprise to see who's leading here. Semban Ruler by quite some margin. 43 points ahead of Huron Reis. Carl Pearce is very close to him in that battle for second, with Jarmo Sestermoin in fourth. Then we've got James Slateson, Matthias de Groot, Kurt van Hoornacker, Navarro de Boyver, Jon Polnus and Gus Franken rounding out the top 10. Archie Lanz is 11th, ahead of Jurgen Knockhart. Tony van der Linden 13th, with Timo McKeon. Lorenzo de Hoor 15th, ahead of Connor Botting, who returns tonight, and Mark Bailey, the 17 drivers in the AM standings. We've got a lot to look forward to there, especially in Pro and Pro-Am here, Zach. The top 3 separated by 10 points in Pro, and the top 3 separated by just 8 points in Pro-Am. It could hardly be much closer.
It's awesome to see. I think this season has boasted some really competitive stuff, and that goes without saying. Essentially, basically, it's so obvious. You just look at the grid and how stacked it is, how close they always are. Looking back to Monza and the trains of cars that we had there, and looking forward to what could be an interesting affair here in Bathurst. But the shake-up in formats and the movements in classes and things like that has just allowed for everyone to be quite close, particularly in the Pro and the Pro-Ams. In the AM, it obviously is a bit of a different story, but already, even in practice, Bathurst is claiming its victims. But yeah, I mean, it's a shame that Sven van Ruler is dominating in the AMs as much as he is. I guess it's not really a shame for him, but I don't know, maybe his ongoing wheel issues might be able to slow him down a bit. I don't know. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But definitely the pros and the Pro-Ams are the ones to watch.
They definitely are in terms of the championship. We've got this week and next week, by the way, in terms of drop weeks counting. And then for the final 2 weeks, it is all on the line at Daytona and Sebring as we round out our season, and no drop rounds can be taken from there. That's where the championship is going to be won and lost in those final couple of races, which is going to be exceptionally exciting, and absolutely can't wait for it. So make sure you subscribe and join us for those rounds as well. Endurance points, of course, in this one, which means it's 65 for a win here, and top 20 scoring points in each class, but that's not going to be a problem. You need to score, you need to complete more than 50% of the laps to get points around here. And it is going to be a race a little bit off survival, and these next 2 weeks are going to be, because I'm just looking ahead here, Zach, as well, at the race at Long Beach coming up next week, which is, well, if you think this one's tight and twisty and difficult and technical and all of those things, then Long Beach is going to be another thing on top of that as well, because that's going to be, it's going to feel very small, which of course it is, I suppose, when we take these drivers around there. So these next 2 weeks are going to be very defining, and that sets us up towards those final 2 weeks, which of course you can't take your drop week in. So it's the pressure's now on really from now until the end.
I guess they could have been harsher and put the likes of the Nürburgring and Bathurst and Long Beach on the weeks that you can't take your drop rounds. I think that would be a little bit harsh, but in total, the tracks that we go to, like the Nürburgring, Bathurst, Long Beach, they weren't exactly very kind with to the drivers in terms of their track choices. We've obviously today at Bathurst, that's the hurdle that we've got to climb and get over today. But as soon as they're done here, they've got to get practicing, I think, for Long Beach, because it is a mightily tricky circuit. The walls are never too far away. Obviously a road course as well, so naturally going to be quite bumpy also. So yeah, I think there's definitely a lot to indulge in for the rest of the season. And again, the difficulties that come with it is going to separate the good from the great. As close to the championship is, and as quick as some of these guys are, it's all about getting to the checkered flag and scoring those points.
It is. And, it's going to be very important over the course of the 75 minutes here. The question in AM, though, remains that can anybody beat Sven van Rooyen here? He has qualified on the pole position. It's not nearly as big of a margin as he had at Monza, which was quite frightening, but at Bathurst here, he's got a little bit less of a gap over the rest, which I suppose is to be expected. But once again, we're looking to see who's going to be able to beat him, and maybe the man on your screen, Car Grid, he's going to be one of those who might be able to manage it, but it's going to be a tall order for anybody aiming to do that.
I mean, with Sven van Rooyen, obviously he's just been on fire since the start of the season, which, you know, you can't blame him. You know, he was placed in AMS, you know, wrongly or rightly. He's taken with both hands and he's ran away with things. At the moment, what is that? 33 points clear of, or 43 points clear of Johan Reigns. Math is there at some point. 337 to 294. Yeah, at some point it's in there. But yeah, Johan Reigns has kept him honest, it must be said. But with only, you know, a few rounds left to go, it is going to be tricky. But as I said a little bit earlier on with Sven van Rooyen, he's been plagued by some wheel issues. We saw him go straight on at Monza because of them and score a couple less points. So maybe that might be his own detriment. Maybe he's driving too fast and what the wheel can handle. Who knows? But yeah, Sven van Rooyen, I think Johan Reigns, Carl Pierce is only 4 points back in all fairness. I don't want to say there is a championship fight there, but if Sven van Rooyen keeps crashing out and costing some points because of that wheel issue, it could quite easily swing the other way.
Yeah, it is indeed 43 points between 1 and 2 there. I know you're still in school, Zach, but I bet you're not taking maths. That took you a long time. But anyway, let's get towards the grid, shall we? And stop ripping each other, and we'll get into it. Jason Dilworth with the pole position here on the mountain, ahead of Stuart Reynolds. Kai DL will be third, with Chris Chadson right behind, directly behind his championship rival there on the outside. Taylor Lane and Hake Lindmo will round out the pros. Lewis Boubier gets pole position in the Pro-Ams ahead of Stuart Wyness. Then it's Timothy Vanderbroek with John Breitenbach. Ivo van der Linden's got a bit of work to do to catch up to Boubier from 5th, with Francois Perdrau 6th ahead of Dean Timms. Marcel Breitenbach on the 4th row. Thomas Pugh and Ashraf Haddad will share the 5th row, with Chris Thacker at the back there. Good to see Al Haddad back on the grid, by the way, in this series, because it's been quite a while since we've seen him. As we mentioned previously, Sven van Rooyen is indeed on the pole position here ahead of Archie Lance. Carl Pierce and Jerome Reigns are sharing row 2, with Conor Botting and Jarmo Sastamoinen on the very back row of the grid. And they'll be rolling away as we speak right now towards the final couple of corners. This is the chase. This is the final chicane before the end of the lap. And I'm sure we're going to see a lot of action down here during the 75-minute race.
It's a heavy braking zone. It's one of the heaviest on the circuit. It's after the flat, you know, the fastest section of the circuit as you run your way through that right-hand kink, and on the brakes can definitely lend itself to some good action. So yeah, Bathurst, you've got to climb up the mountain, you've got to climb back down it. It's a tricky one in itself, and championship's on the line. Let's see how it goes.
There are the Pro-Ams getting themselves underway. 11 of them in this race, of course. The most numerous of our 3 categories here today, with Pro and Am separately, 6 cars each. The lights are on at Bathurst and we are underway. Jason Dilworth was phenomenal last week at Monza, and he's going to take charge early here down under as well. In towards turn 1, he's got a healthy lead ahead of Kai DL and Stuart Reynolds, who's pushed out to 3rd place. Right with his championship rival Chris Chatterton, only a mere points separating them at the start of the day. Lewis Boubier will be in control of the Pro-Ams. He's looking to wrestle the championship lead away from Ivo Linden here today at Bathurst. We get underway in the Pro-Ams. It's a very nice jump from Boubier. He will take the racing line towards turn 1, and he will consolidate that pole position into an early lead, as one of the drivers has to exit the pit lane. That's Francois Perdrau, who just rejoins at the back of the Pro-Am field. They go up mountain straight for the first time. The pole sitters of Dilworth and Boubier have held on to their leads. What about Sven van Rooyen, the only the only pole position sitter who will have to start on the outside line? It won't matter. He's got a nice jump into turn 1 as well, and all 3 leaders will retain their leads because basically they got a fantastic jump on the front straight and there was barely any challenge into turn 1.
Yeah, it's a short run from the green flag into turn number 1, so as long as you can get a good launch, you should be okay. Connor Botting on his return is under a bit of pressure from Johan Rains as they go side by side into Quarry Bend. It's quite a long way round if you try and stick it the long way for Johan Rains, but he's going to give it a good go. Connor Botting keeps it on the inside, close to the wall on the outside, and well, Johan Rains has to tuck back into 5th place. But so far, so good in terms of a clean start as that rise up the hill and through the mountain that I am quite a little bit scared of, but it seems the majority of the pro field have been able to do it quite well as they go through the Conrod Straight and into the chase. It is still Dilworth from DL and Stuart Reynolds P3. So far, so good in terms of the start.
Yeah, Dilworth was absolutely fantastic 1 week ago at Monza. Let's not forget Harry was winning the first race, but he was really chased down late on by Jason Dilworth, who's coming into some good form towards the end of this season. He's quite a long way off in the points though, unfortunately, so he won't be featuring there. Nearly 100 points away with 4 rounds remaining. That is not going to be something he catches up, you wouldn't imagine, in the remaining races. Further back in the Pro-Ams, not much separation here apart from between 1 and 2. Boubier with nearly a second over Stuart Reynolds. Then it's Timothy Vanderbroek. Jean Breitenbach is inside the top 5 as well. It's all BMWs here as it has been for some time now in the Pro-Am standings. Oh, Francois Perdrau's off though, and it's with one of the Lamborghinis, but it's not a Pro-Am Lamborghini, I can tell you. It looks like it's, well, I'm not entirely sure who. It is possibly, Ashraf El Haddad. They must have come together at the chase, I suppose, but that's already damage for Perdrau, who's in after lap 1.
Yeah, well, that is quite a shame as we cut to the fight for the podium. 3 cars in it: Carl Pierce, Johan Rains, Connor Botting, making up this 3-car contingent and getting told, well, Connor Botting having a good old Connor bottling moment once again. It's not taken him too long in his return. He spins it back round off the final corner, and well, I don't really know how he's done that, or just on traction. I'm guessing put the foot down a bit too quickly, but then again, these cars got traction control, so maybe just the car a little bit out of shape. He's dropping quite off the back of the Anfield though.
Well, that final curve's quite vicious, really. Whether you've got traction control or not, it's really will throw you around. And it may well have just done that to Connor Botting, I'm afraid, through Murray's corner at the very end of the lap. Down onto Conrod Straight again for the leaders. It's Jason Dilworth, who's currently holding that first position, ahead of Cardiel, then Stuart Reynolds, Chris Jansen, Taylor Lane, Hacken Limbo, all inside 6 seconds of one another. Inside the top 6. Here is the incident between El Haddad and Perdrau. I think that El Haddad's going to have one of his own and then catch Perdrau in it. So he goes for a big slide across the grass. Please don't. Oh, no. So El Haddad, I'm afraid, not covering himself in glory. He goes for an innocent spin, really, but the rejoin has done for Francois Perdrau, and it might well have spelled the end of his race.
Yeah, that is a shame. We already saw him coming out the pit lane on the opening lap, and well, he spun. That is, yeah. You don't really have many words for that. I mean, you've got to be careful. You've got to be predictable on rejoining the circuit, and unfortunately, he wasn't. Looking to the Anfield though, Sam Van Ruler is back into the pit lane. I was just messaged by one of his mates, I think, saying that the wheel issues came back pretty much as soon as the race had started, and I think already they've claimed him as a victim. He's back into the pit lane, and well, a circuit like Bathurst is probably one of the last ones you want to have some wheel issues at.
Well, it's big news. The championship leader in AMP with drama, and Jeroen Rains and Carl Pierce both with an opportunity to catch up dramatically here. John Breitenbach now really applying the pressure to Timothy Vanderbroek for second place. Excuse me, it's Timothy Vanderbroek on Stuart Reynolds in towards the second turn, So Vanderbroek through into second. Reynolds has to roll over almost. Breitenbach hold on behind. Ivo van der Linden's there as well. Oh, it's a little bit wide for second place. It's all helping Lewis Boubier, but this is a good battle for second place just inside 10 minutes.
Absolutely. Look at, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cars all involved. This is absolutely insane. It's exactly what we love to see, but well, at this point on the circuit, there's not really much that you can do in terms of an overtake. You've just got to suck it up, stay single file, and hope that by the time you get to Forest Selber, you are close enough and have a good enough exit. But well, when you're following so close to a car, your visibility is reduced, and dipping down through the mountain, through Skyline, the S's and the Dipper is probably one of the worst sights you want to see as a rear bumper of someone else's car. We're going to take another look as to what happened to Sam Van Ruler. And oh no, this doesn't give bode well already. He's tapped the wall, and there we go. I think his wheel's just given up. Thankfully, though, he didn't take anyone with him.
No, that was actually Lance who had to slip through there. Van Rulet just pulls off to the left-hand side, and that will be the end of his day, or at least he toes back to pit lane. But that was good avoidance. It had to be from Archie Lance there, out on the mountain. Back down towards the bottom of the hill, and to Jim Brayton back as he tries to make his way through on Stuart Winers. For whatever reason, Winers, after qualifying in second place, is struggling to hold on to this place. Brayton back applying pressure, and it just makes you wonder whether this is going to be the story of Winers' race, because there's a whole queue of cars behind him right now.
Yeah, obviously track position very important here at Bathurst, but again, you've got to keep that pace up, otherwise at some point those cars are eventually, one way or another, going to find a way through, whether it's on a straight or an unorthodox overtaking opportunity or quite simply in the pit lane. You've got to maintain that pace and that consistency through the race, and yeah, well, Stuart Winers did the good job of, putting the lap in qualifying. He's now got to really uphold that and keep that pace up throughout the race. But I don't know, I guess we'll wait and see. Maybe he's just more on the conservative side. It's Bathurst. You don't really want to push the limits too hard and overstep the mark and then find yourself out of the race completely. So maybe that could be the case with Stuart Winers, trying to, play it on the cautious side. This is what happened to Connor Botting. I think this is where he spun a couple laps ago. Just too late on the brakes and touched the curb and around it went.
Yeah, that's the curb on the inside at the final turn, and that's exactly what it will do for you, do to you. Unfortunately for Connor Botting, he's currently down in 5th place in the AM standings. Jim Brayton backs off along with Stuart Winers. The two of them have come into contact on the mountain. Oh dear, this is messy. It's up now at Reed Park, I think that is. It is indeed. It's just after Reed Park. Stuart Winers and John Brayton back have come into contact out on the mountain. It's side by side for second, by the way. It's Stuart Reynolds gets up a place and returns to where he qualified, just ahead of Cardiel. But that is never a nice thing to see. Up on the mountain, two drivers battling for a podium place in Pro-Am, out of the running at the very least, maybe out of the race entirely.
100%, but again, when it's so tight and so treacherous up the hill, it definitely could have been worse. They could have collected someone else, but definitely for the two involved, you hate to see it really, because it has sort of fizzled out a bit of a fight. There's now two cars left. It's Eva van der Linden, Marcel Breitenbach and Dean Timms fighting for 3rd place as opposed to all 5 of them. So it's a bit of a shame, but I guess it happens when you're pushing the limits so much and you're trying to give each other a bit of a fight. But again, we're going to take another look at it because I'm sure there was a lot to digest.
There certainly is. So let's have a look here. Winers is in front. He loses it. Oh, and Breitenbach has nowhere to go. And it's a miracle, I think, Zach. Nobody else got caught up in that. It's not a wide circuit by any means, and somehow most people were able to avoid.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure who it was that had to very quickly dart out of the way when Winers was sort of rolling back onto the circuit, but one of them did, and it was perilously close, and all it took really was just a slight doink and around he went, and that would have spelled the end of yet another person's race. So fine margins obviously, but yeah, I guess that's the best that we were going to get out of a bad situation. It's, as I say, when you're looking so close to the rear end of another car, you can't really predict what they're going to do, and you can't really react when they're about to have a spin either. So unfortunately for Gene Breitenbach, he didn't really have much of a choice. He was always really going to unfortunately get involved in that, which is how it happens. But I guess you've got to move onwards and upwards. I guess I'm assuming they're just going to repair their cars as much as they can, get back out there and try and get the halfway point.
You need to complete half of the laps of the race winner to be classified, 50%. So obviously we don't know how many laps that's going to be yet, because the race is not over and it's a timed race, but you can make a guess. And so far, I do believe everybody's staying in, although, well, with the exception of Sembra Muller. I think François Purdue, Jim Breitenbach, and also Stuart Winers are all repairing their cars. They're all still in the session. As Taylor Lane comes in after only 10 minutes here, this is a very, very early stop. And I wonder whether he's just, well, I've no idea what he's doing here. Maybe he's making his short stop first, but we don't see that very often.
I always thought in a good circumstance, these GT cars can do about an hour, and that's, even without the reduced fuel tanks that they've got here. There's 65%, isn't it? So surely that's not a scheduled stop and ones that he's been forced to do, because I don't see any way that he's making it to the end on that one stop.
No. Everybody's going to have to make 2 here, I believe, as far as the Nordschleife and Le Mans go. Anyway, everyone's going to have to make 2, although they are unusual circuits, of course. The Nordschleife was a problem because they were 1 lap short of making it to halfway, so they had to make 2 stops. Le Mans is always going to be a 2-stop race because of how long you spend on full throttle. Here in Sebring, a little bit more of a question mark, but I would maybe expect 2 stops there nevertheless. This is what happened to Taylor Lane on the replay, by the way, and this might explain why. He's coming to the pit lane, he's got out on the curb, and he's saved it! Wow! I can't believe he saved it, but he has done. And, well, that's not the reason for him pitting, but it is impressive, my goodness.
That was awesome. I have to say, I was so shocked that he was managed to save that. That was quick hands, quick reactions, and I'm sure he panicked, but he kept it nice and composed and just played it off casually. He was like, yeah, I've just nearly crashed into the barrier, but I'm carrying on. I'm absolutely fine. But I think the pit stop was more for a change of underwear than anything. That was incredible. And it was literally, you saw his rear wing inches away from the barrier, and that could have spelled disaster. It is the place on the circuit. You do not want to have one. And then Team Tims has spun round through the dipper, and that is a very bad place to have it parked.
It is. I don't know how he's going to get it turned back round again, to be honest with you. Chris Thacker is going to be involved there as well. He's lost quite some considerable time as a result of all that. Thomas Pugh has got to be in the vicinity now as well. Thacker did get through. You know where Tims has found himself. He's good 5 seconds away at the moment, and Thomas Pugh will catch up. So, not good news for the man third place in the point standings at the moment, Dean Tims, and he'll be falling a little bit further down as a result of all of that as well. Boubier and Van der Linden at the moment separated by just a position, and so there'll be some changes in the standings there. We'll worry about that in about an hour's time, and we'll try and get that math to you a little bit later on. But I mean, it's been a typically chaotic start, to be fair, for Bathurst. I don't think we expected anything less from this circuit.
Absolutely not. I mean, we're getting exactly what we paid for. This is what happened to Dean Tims. Then following very close. We can't quite see it through the dipper. Scrape of the wall. You saw the sparks fly. And unfortunately, it was enough to unsettle the car. Nearly tapped into the side of the Eclipse car there. That might have been of Chris Thacker. And, well, that was so close to disaster because of how narrow that portion of the circuit is relative to how tight it is as well, how much speed you're carrying through. So Dean Tims, unfortunately, spinning it all by himself. But, again, fortunately for the field itself, it was a single car incident.
Absolutely. We've had some chat down in the YouTube chat, by the way, and Zach's getting involved in amongst it. People suggesting that Sam Van Ruler should do the rest of the season on a controller. Which is, I don't think he seems particularly keen on, if I'm honest, but we'll see. Taylor Lane saying that, he's parked it, unfortunately, because the car was undrivable, basically, and he was miles off the pace. So, unfortunately, that's the end of his day, and he is the second confirmed retirement, as far as I can see. Francois Peugeot's back out on the circuit. So is Stuart Winers. We're still waiting for John Breitenbach to have his car repaired, but I believe he's going to be making his way back out there once again, as we've had Archie Lambs off the road here. He was leading in the AM standings at one point, but I'm afraid dropped down to third now with Carl Pearce and Jerome Rains both through. So once again, the chaos will not stop nearly a quarter of an hour into this one.
Will not indeed, and I'm sure it's going to continue for the remaining of it because, Archie Lands dropping down off the podium from the lead. Still going. Is he stopped on this? I'm not entirely sure. Is he still making some progress? He's not ticked over any progress on the circuit. There we go. He's gone but 0.01 of a lap percentage. So he's still going, but he's dropped down a lot of time, which is bizarre, and there he is. He's crawling his way back, and that is why, because I think that car there's definitely seen better days.
Well, has it though? Because it looks all right to me. The engine's still there. He's not blown his engine.
Is it fuel?
It can't be fuel 15 minutes into the race. I was thinking that myself, but I can hear the engine as well, and it wouldn't be making that sound if it didn't have any fuel in it. I've got fuel's obviously not in the engine. Don't come at me, engineers. But yes, it's not good news for the former race leader of the AM standings. Let's have a look and see what happened if we can about that one. It's allowed these two to get out into the lead for the moment, and they're in the lead by quite some distance, more than a quarter of a minute back to Connor Botting at this stage, partly as a result of that spin we saw for Botting at the final corner not so long ago. But that's 2 AM leaders we've already been able to get rid of in the first quarter of an hour, which is slightly unusual, really.
Yeah, quite a little bit, yeah. But I guess if there's anywhere it's going to happen, it is here at Bathurst because of, well, it's Bathurst. So, yeah, Sam van Ruler, unfortunately, it was his wheel that saw disaster. And for Archie Lands, whatever happened to him has seen him now, unfortunately, back into the pit lane and out of contention completely. So Carl Pearce takes the lead of the ratio and range just in behind in second. So good result in the office for the pair of them. Good points gained in the championship. So yeah, we'll wait and see as to what changes that will have an effect. I think they'll definitely close the gap to Sam van Ruler and Archie Lands, unfortunately. Not going to gain much. I think this is exactly what happened to Archie Lands, and it's just nothing's really happened to him. It's just not going.
So this is all we can find as far as we know. And for some reason, Lands just not going anywhere here and has to park it on the side of the road. So I've got no idea. The only thing I can think of is a technical problem with his wheel or something that's made him think, you know, I better pull off the road here and get out of the way. He is currently typing in the Discord, so I do wonder whether he's going to tell us here. Yes, I was right, as it turned out. Wheel stopped working and his car got stuck in gear. That's the end of his day, as far as I'm aware. So that is a real shame. But the second technical issue that's given us a new AM leader as well, which is, you know, the fact we've had 3 leaders in quarter of an hour is a little bit unusual, but 2 technical issues to action that, Zach, is highly unusual.
Unfortunately, we've had the lead changes for the wrong reasons, which is, I don't know, just bizarre, and all for the same reason. I don't know, it's really not often that you see that, particularly in the same class. So yeah, today's been a very unusual one, let's put it that way. And again, almost the same technical issue. I think Sem is more just his wheel bugging out and either staying at one lock or just completely switching off. And Archie Lands, unfortunately, was his gear paddles not allowing him to change gears, which is just again out of order. And he's on the pit exit. So has he got it sorted out?
He must be going again because he's on the way. Oh no. I think he thought he had his issues fixed, and unfortunately maybe as having second thoughts now, because maybe he doesn't after all. But in the end, all hopes of a race win unfortunately gone for him anyway, which is a real shame, and he's not involved in the championship battle either, over nearly 150 points back at this stage in the season. So that is a real shame, but it would be good to see him back out on the circuit. I don't know if he's quite going to manage it. He's back to pit lane once again now. Still waiting for John Breitenbach to return to the circuit as well, but most other drivers we've told you about have been out again, like Francois Peugeot, who's about to move inside the top 20 overall, past Taylor Lane, but that's not going to gain him anything in terms of the Pro-Am standings. We're looking back from Ivo van der Linden, who's currently third, and with Lewis Bouvier out front right now, gaining 10 points on him. We are going to see a change in the championship if things stay as they are.
It's great to see how close the championships are, and yeah, it's great. Lewis Bouvier firing on all cylinders here for the Pro-Am. Obviously, it's the back end of last season in the AM Championship, wasn't quite able to consolidate it, but he's up in the Pro-Ams and really giving it a good fight. And Ivo van der Linden has got his work cut out for him if he wants to stay on top. And well, he's quite a way off, 6.8 seconds off Timothy Vandenbroek if he wants to limit the damage a little bit more. Still, just under an hour left to go, so there are still changes that could be made, but that could also be forwards and backwards, because Breitenbach and Thacker are within striking distance, not far off striking distance, let's put it that way. So Ivo van der Linden could definitely see the championship lead swing the way of Lewis Bouvier. It probably will. Speaking of championships as well, the AM fight between Carl Pearce and Johan Reins, they're separated by 4 points in the AM Championship, and well, yes, they are 43 points off Sam van Ruler. It's a good gain for them to have, and also amongst themselves, if it comes down to it, if Sam van Ruler continues to have issues, it could find itself into the fight of a championship lead. So Carl Pearce and Johan Reins, that is gloves off stuff.
Yeah, I'm not. This is probably going to be a drop round in this case for Sam van Ruler, and I'm going to try and work out how many points will be added to his score as a result. It might be a job for a little bit later on, I'll try and do it. He's going to get 56 points added to his score, which is still quite a lot, but that is his lowest score so far this season, which is quite remarkable, meaning they're not really going to gain that much at all. Chris Thacker, though, will be out on the inside line here ahead of Marcel Breitenbach, and this will be a pass down in towards the chase. Inside line, late on the brakes, and he pulls it up in time, and that was a fairly textbook move, really, for fourth place.
yeah, not too difficult whatsoever. Just up the inside and sorted, really. Not too hard fought from Brayton back. Maybe more interested in closing the gap to Eva van der Linden for the podium, and didn't really want to hold each other up. And while going side by side at Bathurst always is a bit of a question mark. Even at the most prime overtaking opportunity, it can still go quite wrong. But yeah, continuing on, doing their best job possible. There is Francois Peugeot back onto the circuit, and in good time, in all fairness, if he continues on and doesn't, have any more issues for the rest of the race, at the very least, he's expected to get halfway, which at the end of the day is points for P10, which isn't bad, I guess. It obviously would have wanted more with the Frenchman, but I mean, you've got to take what you can get on days like this.
You certainly do. Connor Botting, by the way, might have been off the road somewhere. I'm not entirely sure where, but he's gone back to pit lane now. And I think he's a little bit early, so maybe there has been more drama down there in the AM category. Well, there's certainly been a lot of drama down in AM so far, part of it involving Sam Van Ruler, who joins us now. Sam, welcome to the move again. Good to have you with us, although once again, a little bit earlier than maybe we would like. Just tell us a little bit about what problems you had today.
Yeah, first of all, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, great. Yeah, because I'm not on my rig anymore. So, yeah, well, it's the same situation. It's been fun being in this room every race, but it's kind of starting to become a pattern. The last race is why I'm in here, and it's not really fun. No. Yeah, it's just the same mechanical issues again. In qualifying, they were fine. Practice, they were fine. As soon as I was starting the race, lap 1, it started to happen every lap. And then, yeah, obviously Bathurst. If you get the wheel just locking up every lap, eventually you're gonna go with the car. And yeah, you're not gonna finish the race if it's 75 minutes. It's just not possible.
It's certainly a big ask. I mean, we've got still 3 rounds to go after this one in the coming 3 weeks here, Sam. I mean, do you worry a little bit about the rest of this season now? Because you've built up a fantastic championship lead, but at the moment it's seeming a real struggle for you with the wheel. Is that a real concern now, or do you think there'll be a fix for it in the next few weeks?
Well, the fix, I don't know, but the lead, if I'm struggling with it, not really, because right now a lot of AM drivers have left, so there's like 6 drivers every race participating, and if I finish 6th every race, it's not even that big of a gap point wise to P1. So I'm not that worried about the championship lead yet, but yeah, obviously we do want to finish at least one of the next 3 races if we do want to make it happen. I did some calculations. So it's not that bad, but yeah, I do need to fix something, because obviously with the likes of Long Beach, I mean, you don't want to get some wheel issues there, same as Sebring, Daytona's kind of okay, but yeah, obviously, yeah, I need to find a fix. That's just the way it is.
And putting those aside, how are you feeling about Long Beach next week? Do you like it round there or not?
No, I hate it. I absolutely hate the track. This is kind of a hot take, because I know a lot of people are okay or like the track even, but I don't like the track. No. So it's gonna be just me screaming the entire race.
No, it's fair enough. It's not a classic, I wouldn't say, but it will be interesting. Sam, thanks very much for chatting to us once again. Hopefully we can chat to you after the race next week instead of during it. But yeah, thanks very much for chatting to us again, Sam. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks very much. Sam Van Ruler there joining us once again, unfortunately, during the race. And hopefully next week he'll be able to join us after it instead. Or in the middle of the 2 races, to be fair, so given it's a sprint and then a longer race next week. But interesting to hear what you said there, Zach, about the points and how there isn't actually a big gap between 1st and 3rd. Doing a little bit of first and 6th, I should say. Doing a little bit of calculations myself. Over the 2 sprints and feature rounds, he would lose 18 points to the person who wins. And over a round like this, he would lose 19 points. And times in those by 3. I know maths is not our strong point, but that's more than a 50-point loss. And at the moment, he's got only 43 points between 1 and 2, and that's coming into today. So I don't think he can afford to finish 6th in every race between now and the end. Otherwise, he will lose the championship. So I know he's fairly relaxed about things and seems to think, and I think I'm pretty confident, actually, that he will at least have one of those races where his wheels, not playing up. But it's got to be a bit of a concern at this stage.
it always, you always get them doubts in the back of your mind, especially when you are fighting for the championship, and especially when you're in a position like Sem where you've sort of ran away with it and the expectation is for you to win it. So for something largely out of his control to maybe snatch it away from him, it is obviously going to be quite daunting, and he is obviously going to try and do his best to not let that be the case. As into the last few rounds, it is just a case of maybe getting one more good result, eke out of it, and then take what you can get for the other two. And I do love how he says he's not too keen on Long Beach, and watching a week's time, if his wheel lets him, he'll probably run away with it by 30 seconds and win. But we'll wait and see what goes on. But yeah, Sem's very much more than capable driver, and it's good, to be fair, that he is keeping nice and composed, because the worst thing that he could do is probably panic in this stage and let it get the best of him. He's just got to drive with what he can and do what's within his control, because at the end of the day, that's all he can do.
Yeah, it is. And unfortunately, it's been a very attritional day in the AM category already. We're down to half as far as I can see, with Connor Botting now out of the race after 10 laps. He waited for a little bit for some repairs there, but I believe now has taken the end of the race, and unfortunately we may be down to just the podium runners now already inside the first half an hour here. Carl Pearce leading your own range. As I calculated there, though, in terms of Sam Van Ruler's actual championship lead here, he will still score 56 points today. At the moment, Carl Pearce is only scoring 65, and your own range 59 at the end of today. So really, they're barely making a dent into his championship lead because of the way the drop rounds work. But of course, then again, next week at Long Beach, he doesn't have a safety net to fall back on anymore, because all of a sudden his drop round will become a 0-point round, which is always a little bit of a dangerous thing. But for now, when we return next week, I don't think his championship lead will have taken too much of a hit.
No, I don't think so. He's just got to be careful that into the final 2 rounds he doesn't have any issues there, because they can't be taken as drop week. So if there is a week for his wheel to wreak havoc, it's got to be next week as well. So we can take that as a drop round, and hopefully have the final 2 as nice and secure ones to get him to the end of the season. But yeah, again, only time will tell. It seems to be a very temperamental issue. At one moment it works, and it's like, oh great, my wheels work, and then at the blink of an eye, it all changes, and you're in the wall and out of the race. Only a couple laps in. So yeah, for Sam, I'm sure he's sort of living in uncertainty and very insecure as to what's going to go on with his wheel and with his championship. Again, it is out of his control, but also I guess it does put a bit of pressure on Carl Pearce and Johan Reigns to do their best in the closing stages to close the gap as much as they can. For them, they're sort of getting this opportunity week in, week out, with Sem dropping back some points, and while today they're not necessarily going to gain a lot, going forward, Long Beach, Sebring, Daytona, etc., they then have to deliver, like today, first and second. I guess it's the best they can do if they want to close the gap. So I guess while it's not on track fighting, it is in some cases a championship battle.
It is very interesting right now, even with the gaps we have. Let's have a look at a replay of Hacken Limbo down at McPhillamy Park. Oh my word, that's a moment. His heart will have been in his mouth through there, and it's always a huge danger at this circuit, as Eva van der Linden, by the way, comes into the pit lane. The first scheduled pit stop of the day. It's always a big moment in McPhillamy when you're out wide like that, because the curb on iRacing particularly is very vicious, and you don't often get away with it, as Lindmo did there.
Oh, 100%. It's very tricky. To the final corner at Murray's as well. You get on the curb and it just spits you out. But also through McPhillamy, you're going very quick for how tight the track is, and it just takes one little excursion onto the wrong bit of the curb and it's a snap. And at that speed, it is so difficult to control it. Once again, we've got another replay lined up. We'll take a look as to what's happened out on track. A bit of rallycross are being told from Ponto Peugeot, who's already had it in the wars. This is into the chase, way too late on the brakes. Cuts over onto the circuit, and well, it's I don't know. Yeah, he's just managed to carry on going. I'm sure a hefty slowdown for him, but that's always going to be some time lost. Fortunately for him, he's not back in the pit lane, so he's able to continue and work on getting to the halfway mark.
Racing into the night here, as I'm sure you can see at Bathurst, which really doesn't happen very often. GT3 racing around here is fairly rare, and racing in the darkness even more so. There did used to be a Bathurst 24-hour race, by the way, back some time ago, that did, I can't remember if it was 20, 30, maybe further years ago, but that's now been replaced by Bathurst 12-hour, and there's no longer a 24-hour around here. But this is a very rare occasion. You don't often see racing in the night at Bathurst, because even during the 12-hour, the only first hour really, you see any form of dark running, and even then it is certainly during the sunrise, and that's about it really for them. But in about 45 minutes time, it's going to be properly dark for Jason Dilworth, picking his way through this circuit right now, as he's doing. Still in the lead of this one, more than 5 seconds in front of Stuart Reynolds, and there are plenty of gaps in Pro right now. It's just a case of who's going to blink first in terms of making mistakes here. As long as you get your strategy right, you've got to put enough fuel in and everything like that. The positions aren't going to change otherwise, unless, of course, somebody goes off the road, which is, of course, an ever-present possibility in the circuit.
Yeah, and well, that was close to the wall from Jason Dilworth going through Skyline. He very much had that front right rear arch all the way close to the barrier, using all the circuit possible, which I guess you've got to if you want to be a racing driver, but it just goes to show, you know, around a circle like this, those margins are very fine. And yeah, when it comes to attrition, it's all the talking points for this race. It is going to be a case of who makes the least mistakes, or who makes the biggest mistake as to who's going to lose or win at the end of it. But so far, so good for Jason Dilworth. All he's got to do is not completely mess up on track or in the pit lane, and he should be good, so long as Stuart Reynolds doesn't find a second wind of pace. On that last lap, it was a 2:02.1 for Dilworth and a 2:02.8 for Reynolds. So, still chipping away at that gap is Dilworth, bridging the gap between himself. And here he comes into the pit lane under halfway through the race, but he's going to fuel up again. And I'm guessing there is going to have to be a second stop if that's the end of his fuel tank.
You'd think so. So, yeah, just over half an hour in. It's going to be a 2-stop for Jason Dilworth and for Cardiel, who's also in. Your own Reigns in from second place in the AM standings as well. Ivo van der Linden and Thomas Pugh have both been in pit stops in the Pro-Am category as well. But the point of what you need to get to in this race, of course, is 37.5 minutes if you want to do it on a one-stop race here. Hakin Lindmo goes past the pit lane, so does Chatterton as well. So as Lewis Boubier comes into the pit lane. So ideally, really, from Reynolds, we need possibly 3 more laps. And I think going 3 laps further than Dilworth, who presumably has run his tank dry there, is going to be a pretty tall order for anybody to manage.
Yeah, it's also quite a long lap here at Bathurst, upwards of just over 2 minutes and quite a long running distance, I think 6.14 kilometers. So it's not a short track by any means, and it's going to be hard to save those extra couple laps of fuel. So I think it is going to be a splash and dash maybe towards the end as Cardiel leaves the pit lane. We're going to take a quick look as to what's happened, because I'm sure there's plenty of replays along there. And there's Hakin Lindmo pushing the limits going through Skyline. The S's bit of a drift. Has he managed to hold it? No, he hasn't. The car's gone and tapped the barrier, and he's got to hope. Oh, reversing that's always going to be a bit sketchy. He's got to hope that hasn't knocked his wheels out of alignment.
Well, he's gone past the pit lane, so gone past it once, so clearly it's not that bad for him. Even if there is any damage, still waiting for the top 3 to come in. Timothy Vanderbroek is the only one in Pro-Am still waiting to make a pit stop. Carl Pearce is in from the lead in Am as well. There goes Chris Thacker. Here comes Ivo van der Linden, and he's not going to be able to get there. Van der Linden behind Thacker. Brayton back quite some distance behind as well. So this is the battle now for 3rd place in the Pro-Am standings. Thacker in front of van der Linden. And I believe, if memory serves me correctly, van der Linden was in front beforehand. He's had a shorter pit stop as well, so I've no idea where Thacker's found the pace there, but he has done, and he gets up into that 3rd place. They might all be able to get ahead of Vanderbroek, to be fair, so that might be something that changes when the new race leader in Pro-Am comes into the pit lane. But for now, it's about these two who are battling, as Chris Chatterton goes 1 lap further now. Stuart Reynolds in from the overall lead. Chatterton goes 1 lap further. He'll still need 1 lap after this one to think about doing a 1-stop though, I think.
It's going to be tricky unless he comes in now and saves the lap in the second stint. I don't know. That's wide from Chris Thacker though, over the gravel, and Ivo van der Linden finds his way back through. Small mistake. Thankfully for Thacker, he's able to continue going, but Ivo van der Linden, after losing the place to Chris Thacker doing all the hard work, somehow in the pit lane sequence found himself ahead, and all that hard work's been undone because, again, it was just slightly wide going through. All the speed, the car naturally wanted to go to the outside, and one wheel touched the gravel, and then it turned into, I think it was all 4 wheels off at some point, but well done in order to hold it. It's just now he's got to do the thing of working his way back through, as there's Timothy Vanderbroek, race against time to get himself back on circuit.
Yeah, it's Tiffany Vanderbroek, who we're all eyes will be on here. I believe might already be making his way down the entrance exit of pit lane, is he? Oh no, that's Lindbergh, excuse me, who makes his way just out in front of Lewis Boubier, who has a quite considerable lead at this stage. Now Vanderbroek's going. Where's Van der Linden? Not close enough. Not by some way. So Vanderbroek into second. Van der Linden restores third place, ahead of Chris Thacker, who briefly jumped him. And that's quite a gap for Vanderbroek there. It seems that the gaps at the front are actually getting quite a lot bigger as this race goes on. But Van der Linden, once again, is going to have another long stint ahead of him because he's got Thacker, Breitenbach and Timms all pretty close behind him.
Yeah, he is indeed. So, yeah, again, it is going to be a case of limiting your mistakes. And again, when it comes to the second round of pit stops, how quickly you can get in and out and hopefully continue in front. But yeah, Van der Linden has got his work cut out for him. At this stage in the race, if Lewis Boubier keeps it nice and clean to the end and does take the victory, it is definitely going to be a change in hand at the top of the Pro-Am Championship. So Ivo van der Linden in his head is doing his best to try and limit that damage as much as possible going into the final 3 rounds and at least give him a fighting chance. So yeah, if he stays in third, that's only a 10-point deficit, but 4th, 5th, even 6th potentially could spell disaster. Chris Thacker back under a second, and well, I must be said, looking to the pros, we're on board with Cardiel at the moment, who was doing quite well in the first end. Still waiting for Chris Chatterton to come into the pit lane. At the moment, he's on to do it on a one-stop.
Wow. This could be massive news for Chris Chatterton. He has made the 19 laps. So, Dilworth has just under 20 seconds to catch up. And look at Dilworth's last pit stop time, by the way. If you're wondering why the gap between himself and Reynolds is so big, then just have a look at that. 15 seconds between them, because Dilworth's pit stop was 17 seconds. Stuart Reynolds, 26 seconds. Now, that's not a long stop from Reynolds. It's a short one from Dilworth. So this is very, very interesting, as you can see there on the left-hand side. What is Dilworth planning? I guess he's just gone for a slightly shorter stop now, rather than a bit later on, because clearly these guys have nearly made it on one stop. They certainly don't need 2 full tanks of fuel during their 2 stops.
No, absolutely not. So maybe Dilworth is going for 2 short sprints to the end. I guess I'm not entirely sure. Maybe over average, he's running on less fuel for longer, rather than doing 2 full tanks and then 1 little tank. He can do 1 full tank and then 2 little tanks to keep his car nice and light and agile. But yeah, an interesting strategy. And even in sort of an endurance that's not really an endurance in 75 minutes, there is still some changes and some differences in terms of the strategy that we're looking quite eagerly on. So Chris Chatterton, saving the fuel and going long now into the pit lane, and is on to do it on one stop. We've then got Dilworth, who has been a little bit interesting in terms of his shorter first stop, and then everyone else that's on the more orthodox strategy. We've got 3 different approaches to it in that pro field, and albeit quite a small pro field, that is looking quite spicy in terms of which strategy is going to come out on top.
Well, this is looking very, very interesting indeed. Jason Dilworth makes his way out over the line to retake the lead here. We know that's going to happen, but what's Chatterton gonna, or where's Chatterton going to be by the end of this one? We've got a battle for the lead in AM as well to keep an eye on. It's a very, very interesting developing race as we go over the half distance at Mount Panorama. Jerome Rains really vaulting the curb down there at turn 2, and so we'll just fall back from Carl Pearce. More than a minute behind is Jarmo Sastamainen. These 2, these 3 in fact, with Jarmo Sastamainen, know that they're going to be finishing on the podium today. But in what order is it going to be? There's Chatterton. He's on his way out. Down in 4th place. Up Mountain Straight. There's Cardiel. And you can imagine Chatterton has packed that car full of fuel, almost overflowing at this point. 26 seconds down on the lane. And that's not too much of a surprise at all. Now we wait to see how long Jason Dilworth's final pit stop's going to be, and how far behind Chatterton he'll come out, if indeed he comes out behind Chatterton at all.
Yeah, so I guess Dilworth's got the stint of his life in order to make the most of that fuel that he's put in, and make the most of the pace in the car, because he's sort of been in a position where he can play it a little bit more conservative because he's had the gap. But I guess now the pressure is kind of on his shoulders, and for Chris Chatterton it's a case of sticking to your gut, sticking to this one-stop strategy and making sure that fuel tank lasts all the way to the end of the race. I think Chatterton, it depends what he wants. Does he want the race win? Is he happy with just a podium? I guess he's gone for this abnormal approach, which we weren't really expecting, but Chatterton's gone for it, and well, I guess only time will tell as to which strategy is going to come out on top. At the moment, this is the fight for third. Ivo van der Linden still able to stay in front of Chris Thacker, but Thacker has kept him honest and kept the gap. It's just been the case of there's not really many places to pass here at Bathurst. You've got to be very particular with when and where you get it done.
We've got to be very precise indeed. On board with Thacker here, trying to pick our way through the darkness on the mountain, through McPhillamy, down now at Skyline, down the hill, driving where you almost can't see, through the dipper now, following the BMW in front. Get your line right as you try and set yourself up for Forest Elbow right at the very last here. Watch out for that bit of wall that sticks out on the left hand side as well, and don't run out wide into the wall on the right hand side either. You'll need a big run on towards Conrod Straight. That's where you're most likely going to make your moves. You're on reins, still behind Carl Pearce, as you can see on the right hand side of your screen. But this is a real challenge for these drivers. I mentioned earlier on that we haven't seen Bathurst 24-hour race, and I did go and look this up by the way, for 19 years it is we haven't seen one, so that was fully racing in the darkness. Bathurst 12-hour doesn't race in the darkness for too long. Here we have on iRacing Zach, so that won't be too much of experience to these guys. I'm not sure that many of these drivers will have raced in darkness before either preparing for this race or actually doing this race right now. They won't have done much racing in the darkness at Bathurst at all. It's just not one of those circuits you really do it very often.
It isn't, and it is very much an abnormality to have. So yeah, it's obviously a step into the unknown, for these guys. Obviously, visibility is going to be very limited. That goes without saying. Obviously, they have got the headlights to sort of help with them. There's the change. Chris Thacker side by side with Ivan van der Linden. This is the fight for the podium into Quarry. The right-hander in the Eclipse race, and BMW finds his way ahead. Ivan van der Linden not really with much of a fight, and while it is dark, you definitely could have seen that one coming for quite some time with Chris Thacker. But yeah, obviously the headlights help, but they're not going to be the be-all and end-all that really help you. And also with the darkness, you haven't got the sunshine on the track, which means the track temperatures are going to cool, which means there is going to be slightly less grip. So not only can you not see where you go, and you also, in some cases, can't really predict what the car's going to do either.
Here's another replay from out on the mountain. Kai DL, who was running up there, and McPhillamy misses the apex by a mile. And I can't believe the amount of drivers we've seen get away with that kind of thing today, because normally that is a death sentence. But today, they're either very lucky or very skillful, or both, because Kai DL has held on there on this occasion. He's still third, not far in front of Chris Chatterton, with Chris Thacker and Ivo van der Linden battling for third here in Pro-Am as well. But it was a bit of a bizarre one actually from DL. The save after he got up on the curb was a good one and whatever, but how he ended up out there, I'm not entirely sure. He just seemed to almost voluntarily miss the apex. That's what it looked like.
Maybe just didn't turn in early enough. You do have to turn in quite early for McPhillamy to actually make the apex. Maybe just miss the curb, and sometimes you do use the curb to hook the car around ever so slightly, and maybe that just might be the knock-on effect. Maybe the tyres are dropping down a little bit. Chris Chatterton does move his way up ahead. You can see on the left-hand side of your screen, he's now up onto the podium places. So Kai DL has lost that place, and Chris Chatterton finds himself on the podium, which is quite a nice start to his second stint for him. But Kai DL, I think, just still a little bit shaken from that incident, because once again, as you say, it's been a driver that's very skillfully managed to cross their arms and obviously pray that they're not going to find themselves in their barrier. But Kai DL managed to hang on to it quite well. Unfortunately, hanging on to the podium wasn't quite what he could reach for either.
This is how Chris Chatterton got onto the podium so far. Out in straight. This is on Kai DL. Turn number 2. DL did the smart thing there of keeping his car in the middle of the road and put up a good fight on the outside line, but you're always going to struggle out there. The camber of the road, meaning that you just haven't got the grip that you will do on the inside line, was DL really didn't do a lot wrong there, putting his car in the middle of the road, forcing Chatterton to pick a side, and then he hung it around the outside really well. But in the end, you are fighting against the odds there.
It is always going to be difficult, as you say, the camber of the road, but also just the length of the corner, as Ivo van der Linden and Chris Thacker are getting very close to each other through Skyline. But yeah, it's just a long way round. The car doesn't really have much grip. Obviously, yeah, it's just you're fighting a losing battle as you work your way through. But Cardiel, again, ticked all the boxes in terms of a defense, was able to, force Chatterton's hand a little bit, but if he wanted to keep that place, he probably would have had to go all the way to the right-hand side to try and defend. And Chris Chatterton, played it smart and filled the space that was given on the inside. And unfortunately for Cardiel, it just wasn't quite enough on the outside to actually make it stick. But a good fight nonetheless. And, well, I think Chris Chatterton is now starting to take off into the distance. Cardiel, I think, was always going to fight a losing battle there, because at this stage, Chris Chatterton is looking quite good in terms of the speed.
He is. And you would maybe expect that, since he's slightly fresher out the pit lane than everybody else, but even so, it is maybe looking good here for Chatterton. And of course, in his battle in the championship with Stuart Reynolds, it's going to be a very, very interesting one indeed. The two of them separated by just 2 points coming into today. On board with Ivo van der Linden, who right now needs a few more points next to his name, because he's losing 14 to Lewis Bouvier today as things stand. It's quite a lot really in such a close championship. Make our way down Mountain Straight towards turn 2. It's just less than half an hour remaining in the race. Still in front, and this now one of the only battles we have out on the circuit. I think Ivo van der Linden has found himself just staying in this position for now, because I don't really see the point in attempting to make a move, maybe until the very end of the race now, because it's unlikely that either of them will be able to catch Timothy van der Broek, and there's just not that much point in terms of battling. Let's have a look at Jeroen Reigns in the AM standings. He's making his way through Skyline. Oh, and towards the dipper. Oh dear. Jeroen Reigns here with a huge moment. And I think he's gotten away without major damage, but that has given Carl Pearce a 20-second lead in this race.
Yeah, it's not great. Obviously, Jarmis Astamoinen was miles behind, so he is going to be able to keep second place. And, well, that Anfield really has been struggling around Bathurst, but Carl Pearce now, it's no doubt that he's going to be able to take the victory. If the same thing that happened to Jeroen Reigns doesn't happen to Carl Pearce, it should be a fairly easy affair for him, and for him to take second place in the championship as well. Still second place for Jeroen Reigns, obviously, but that is not going to help at all. Not only his confidence, he just has to hope that his tyres aren't shot as well. Cardiel already back into the pit lane. Was he similar to Dilworth in the taking a slightly shorter stop last time through?
I don't think so, but that doesn't mean he hasn't opted for a shorter stop now anyway, or an earlier stop now, I should say. Let's see, it's ticking towards 17 seconds, which Dilworth managed in his first stint, although DL staying there for quite some time longer. Now goes 22 seconds, it's slightly shorter, and you can tell it is getting down towards the end of the race, but DL there not exactly with a short stop. And he'll do well to finish on the podium here, I think. The guys who are already there right now are more likely to stay there. Now, Carl Pearce has got quite the lead as a result of Jeroen Reigns last time, but goodness me, what's he doing here? Carl Pearce, he's entirely forgotten about the chase. He's, well, I've got absolute... I can't even explain that. But Carl Pearce has entirely forgotten about the chase and almost went straight on into a tyre wall there. Thankfully, caught himself before he did, but he will not want to do that again.
The only time you ever see people do that is when they're going for the jump, but at this stage in the race, I don't think anyone is particularly keen on doing that. So, yeah, that's a weird one from Carl Pearce. It's just, I don't know, but the car just seemed to just not want to go through the right-hand kink. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, either way, that is now being two bits of issues that have struck both Carl Pearce and Jeroen Reigns, who is obviously going to close the gap because of that slowdown, or at least marginally. But yeah, Carl Pearce, that was probably a scary moment for him, it must be said. But yeah, well, that was not exactly what we expected at all from a driver. I guess the lack of visibility, again, no idea, as here goes Ivo van der Linden back, trying to fight his way back onto the podium.
Side by side into the chase between the two. Van der Linden down the inside and back onto the podium all over again. It's too late on the brakes though, bit wide, and he will be under pressure again from Chris Thacker. Side by side down towards Murray's at the end of the lap. Thacker will brake relatively late, but not late enough to hold off Van der Linden. And so we will have a new driver into third place. Although Timothy Vanderbroek comes into the pit lane now and will change it all anyway. KDL now, I believe, possibly out of the race as Jarmo Moinen gets back going again here on the entrance to pit lane. Is it? Oh no, that's out of the chase, excuse me. But he's back going again now. Let's have a look at what happened with Hakan Lindmo and why he's come into the pit lane as well. I thought it was a scheduled pit stop, but clearly it wasn't. He's got damage from somewhere, and this may be where he got it from. Bit of a spin, and there shouldn't be any damage actually, but a bit of an awkward one. Unless he gets hit by here by someone. Well, not quite, but this is a horrible place to be.
Yeah, not the place I would want to be either. He's having to do not only 3.10 to get back going again, but yeah, that was always going to be suboptimal. And again, Bathurst claiming yet another victim, which is scary stuff in the dark through one of the trickiest parts of the circuit as well. And Stuart Vine, as we're getting told, is having a couple of issues as well, as he's had a couple of issues. Getting told that Carl Pierce, by the way, had a couple of brake issues from Mark Fleming in the YouTube chat, so thank you for clarifying. But here we go. Here's Stuart Vines through Quarry Bend. Ran a little bit too wide over the curb.
Oh,
Doink.
no.
That is a big hit.
Yeah, big hit. Very big. And that's another moment down into pit lane for Winus. He's completed 20 laps. That should be enough for points now, but and I believe he is out of the race. Any more retirements to update you on? I don't think so. I'd tell you about KDL. Waiting to see whether Ashraf Haddad will return to the fray. Along with Timothy Vanderbroek as well. I thought it was a scheduled pit stop from him for second place, but he's now been in there for 90 seconds and now finally leaves the pit lane after 100 seconds. Does he? No. So he's out of the race. He's the latest retirement. This is Hakan Lindmo again, by the way, who's also been in the pit lane for nearly 2 minutes. And he didn't get damaged on his spin down the dipper. He absolutely made sure he got damaged there. Well, that is quite a bizarre one for Hakan Lindmo, who was got back down to pit lane. But we are going to see now new drivers inside the podium places in Prime especially, with Ivo van der Linden and Chris Thacker now battling for second and third legitimately. In this one, with just over 20 minutes to go. Van der Linden seems to have found a bit of extra pace here late on, and he's just reducing the amount that Louis Boubier gains on him today. If things stay as they are, Boubier would be 5 points ahead of him going into the next round. Things staying very, very close there, though. Let's have a little look at what happened for KDL earlier on in the race as well. This is why he came in to make another stop. Oh, it's a big moment. Wow. A big slide. He slides along the wall there at Sulman Park. And that is the end of it for KDL. A real shame. But a pretty big save there. Wall assisted, admittedly, but he's now out of the race, is KDL. So I'm starting to lose track of quite how many retirements we're having here, but Hakan Lindmo has been... Oh, that's Jason Dilworth, race leader. Jason Dilworth off into the cutting. Goodness me. Well, let's hope he hasn't got much damage there, because there's more than 20 minutes to go here for Jason Dilworth. Unforced error, but Bathurst biting once again.
He's claimed so many, and Jason Dilworth might just add to that count of another one biting the dust. But yeah, Jason Dilworth, that is an uncharacteristic mistake that we've seen from him, and he's been unfazed all race long until that point, whether it's the dark, whether it's the pressure. But that's going to help Chris Chatterton in his pursuit, maybe with the one-stop strategy, let's not forget. But Dilworth, he's carrying on fine. He's still got the pace. He's not limping around. So hopefully only a lack of damage, but Stuart Reynolds is closing the gap and might have some issues of his own.
Yeah, he's had issues of his own down at McPhillamy Park by the looks of things. Saw that he'd had an issue and he's dropped about 10 seconds. So the top two in the race, both having issues on this latest lap. Goodness me, we are seeing quite the show here this evening. Very, very attritional race. You'd think the Nordschleife would be the most of them, but Bathurst so far is producing quite a show. Here's a replay of what happened to Jarmo Moinen down towards the chase. Has he forgotten about the chicane as well? Ooh. It almost appeared like it. Oh, the Audi. grabbing out of his control, and he wasn't able to get it back. As long as he can get, well, he's actually not even had to pit, remarkably. But he'll get back onto the road. Jason Dilworth, by the way, in live pictures, has come into the pit lane.
Yeah, well, maybe that is for his scheduled stop. Maybe that is for a bit of damage. Stuart Reynolds is able to continue on despite that. And, well, yeah, it's just been one after the other. We're going to have a look as to what's happened to Stuart Reynolds. He's working his way through the left, tapped the wall, and that sent the car into a bit of a spiral. Nice little slow-mo sideways. He's slammed the brakes on. It's not going to be enough to slow the car down. He smashes into the sponsor signs and does quite a few pirouettes. He's more of a ballerina than a race car driver at that point. How much has that affected his car, his downforce, his speed? Well, that is a big talking point with 20 minutes to go.
But not enough, clearly, to come into the pit lane because he's still out there. But I can't believe he's gotten away with that. Absolutely cannot believe it. Got out wide into the wall at Sulman Park, then into the grass there on the way towards McPhillamy and hit the wall at a really nasty angle there. That would have, well, I'm surprised it hasn't done more damage, put it that way. That there to car of Stuart Reynolds. Now, 17 seconds again from Jason Dilworth down in pit lane. It seems that he didn't really have much to repair at all, if anything, in terms of damage. 6.5 seconds between himself and Chris Chatterton, who may well still have a bit of fuel saving to do here to make this on one stop. Just more than 15 minutes to go. Dilworth knows what he's got to do here for the remainder of this race. It's just going to be a bit of a chase between the two of them. And we could be in for a real grandstand finish for the overall win.
100%. It's been amazing. This is what happened on board this time with Stuart Reynolds. Through the left, this is definitely going to be quite scary. Already out of shape, taps the barrier, out of shape still, strewing away at the wheel, bang into the barrier. That is scary, and fortunately for him, he had no other cars around him, but how he's able to just pull back onto the circuit. No major sort of left or right hand downs on the steering wheel, so no wheel geometry changes, major ones at least. So he has got off very, very lucky. There's Haken Limo back out onto the circuit after his massive crash. He's got a little bit of a scrumpled in rear left wheel arch, which is not ideal, but he's out on circuit trying his best to at least scrape some points, because scraping some points in the pros means getting the points for 4th place, which that's still quite a hefty result if he can get to the halfway mark.
By the way, we've now got a third of the field out of this race. John Breitenbach is the last running driver, down in 19th place right now. We've just had the retirements of Timothy Vanderbroek, Ashraf El Haddad, Kai Diel, Stuart Winers, all confirmed to be out of this race. But Haken Limo determined not to be one of them. He returns to the racetrack. Francois Purgel still soldiering on as well, by the way. And so it's actually 15 drivers still running by the looks of things. So there we are. Chris Charlton's still one of them. He's got those rear lights making their way down the shapes and the curves of that Mercedes. Looks absolutely fantastic and iRacing. Very glad that you can have those in the night time, shining brightly on the mountain at the moment. Just over 15 minutes remaining. Stuart Reynolds still having to make one more pit stop. At the end of this lap, we'll have a view as to what lap times Chris Chatterton's doing in relation to Jason Dilworth, to see whether we are going to get that big finish between the two of them in quarter of an hour.
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, not long left to go. It's the final sprint to the finish, but with still a lot left to be answered. The fight for now second in the Pro-Ams, the potential fight for the lead still, well, it's not going to be settled probably with side-by-side action. It is going to be settled with who's going to be the best in terms of strategy. We've got the top three all on 3 different ones. Dilworth going for a long one, then 2 short ones. Chris Chatterton going for the halfway mark. Stuart Reynolds going long, and then presumably going for a short splash and dash towards the end. It is going to be a very interesting one indeed, and already into the final 50 minutes and already into very dark stuff here. You can't really see further than 100 meters ahead of you. That's surely got to be very difficult. These cars driving more on instinct than anything.
Into the pit lane for Stuart Reynolds. I can't believe he's managed it that far, if I'm honest with you, but he has done. And an hour into this one now. He makes his way down pit lane. Chris Chatterton slides into the grass, but makes his way over the line for the end of another lap. It's a 2-minute 3.5, a 2-minute 2.5 for Jason Dilworth. 1 second gained by the driver in behind, and this could be quite the finish. 5 seconds between the two of them, less than quarter of an hour remaining. There are the gaps on the bottom of your screen. Chatterton up towards turn 2. Brake late, of course, because of the incline here. Hold it as tight to the inside and use the banking as you can, and then in towards the cutting. Don't go too fast in the first part, you end up riding around the outside wall. And then it's about as getting close to these walls as you possibly can. Just maximising the room, getting as wide as possible here as well on the exit there. Risking it at this stage because we're getting towards the end of the race. Open up Stillman Park as much as possible. Use the exit as well. Same with McPhillamy. And he's catching up to lap traffic as well, which could be a bit of a problem late on. That was, I don't know who that was, Zach, but very good lap traffic there from somebody to get out the way before Skyline.
Absolutely, there's probably hardly a worse place to go through lap traffic if not down the mountain. So whoever it was that he was lapping, maybe Thomas Pugh, maybe to be the last to go off the lead lap. But either way, he just pulled over and was like, "Yep, short blue flags, off you go." But yeah, Chris Chatterton definitely going to be very grateful to that. Maybe in 13 minutes' time when it all comes down to it, and maybe he finds himself victorious come the end of the endurance race here at Bathurst. But yeah, small things like that definitely add up, and Chatterton is going to be hoping that he's got enough as he goes purple to the fifth sector of the circuit. That is sensational stuff, considering he's meant to be saving some fuel.
Maybe he's done with that now. He's just going for it. I think Joe have still gained a couple of attempts on him on this lap, nevertheless, but we'll see what lap times are like at the end of this one. Been great to spend a lap on board with Chris Chatterton actually, and to really see what he's been up to over the course of that one. A personal best from Chris Chatterton right when he needed it most. He still lost 0.08 of a second to Jason Dilworth, but talking about pulling it out of the bag when you absolutely need it, Chris Chatterton with his first lap time in the 2-minute 2s.
Huge stuff, and right at the death of it as well. He's absolutely flying at the wheel of that BMW, of course up 3 places from when he started, and really propelled himself into a very good position in this race. The fight for third in the Pro-Ams as well, Chris Thacker falling back behind Marcel Breitenbach, and Ivo van der Linden into the pit lane for his final stop as well. I'm assuming that Chris Thacker has already taken his second stop, or he's still waiting to do it. I'm again not entirely sure, but they both passed Ivo van der Linden while he's in the pit lane, stopped stationary, and well, there we go, Ivo van der Linden. If that's genuinely going to be 4th place, then that's going to be quite a hit to his championship.
Chris Thacker out of Forest Elbow, this is. Oh dear. Slams into the outside wall. I mentioned earlier on, when you're doing Forest Elbow, you do have to get quite close to the outside wall there and extend as much as possible, but not that much. He nearly escaped the boundaries of the circuit there. He was so hard into the wall.
Yeah, well, that was a bit of a launch. So yeah, Chris Thacker, well, he's going to be, well, yeah, again, lucky to still be in this race, I think, more than anything. And both him and Breitenbach pushing the limits of the car around Bathurst, which has already claimed so many people in this race, and I don't really recall anyone having a clean run all the way through so far.
Not really, no. So just over 10 minutes remaining in this one. I reckon we could even have 6 laps to go though, because Chris Chatterton's coming towards the end of the lap here, and I'm afraid it's not been nearly as good of a lap from Chatterton as the previous one. He did his first 2-minute 2 last lap, but this time has been nothing like it at all. He'll go over the line now with 10.5 minutes remaining maybe, and it's a 2-minute 3.7. It's a good 0.8 of a second slower, while Dilworth has responded with a 2-minute 2.3. He gains 1.4 seconds, and Chris Chatterton is being caught here with possibly 6 laps to go. He will start to look in his mirrors more and more. Dilworth will be able to smell blood here, and the gap's down to 3.5 seconds. This race may well have another lead change in it yet.
Jason Dilworth is going to be driving the final 10 minutes of his life. He is going to be pushing the limit of that car, and so too is Chris Chatterton. He is going to be hoping he doesn't have to make another stop. It's been a race of strategies, and it might well still be decided on the circuit. Dilworth is, well, been very, very good since the start of this race. He was obviously on pole position, ran away with it over the course of the first stint, has done a bit of a different one in terms of the strategy, and now it all comes down to this. He's got to do the hard work in terms of pushing that Mercedes to its absolute limit, chucking it around Bathurst. There's not really much prettier sights, in all fairness. The lack of margin for error, the way you chuck it up and down a mountain, it is awesome to see, especially when this is on the line. A race victory is going to mean a lot to both drivers, and well, Chris Chatterton, again, he's going to be hoping that he's got enough in store to at least sustain the gap for as long as possible, and again, hope that he's got enough in the tank to push if he needs to in order to defend.
Let's see. On to Conrad straight again for the leaders. A little bit of traffic here to deal with for Chatterton. I think that could be Carl Pierce, actually. No, excuse me, it's somebody else. Guillermo Sustamoinen. Hard to see, it is indeed Sustamoinen in the Audi there. Might even get in the way of Dilworth here into the chase. And Dilworth maybe just had to lift off there. And maybe lost a bit of time, actually. Gap remains at 3.5. Will be interesting to see lap times here, because I think they're both going to be very, very similar. It's another personal best from Chatterton. He's really responding when it's needed. Another 1/10 of a second gain by Dilworth, but it's only 1/10. I'm talking about producing in the pressure moments. That's exactly what Chatterton's been able to do so far. By the way, it's going to be very close as to whether this is 4 laps to go or 5, because of the way that the timing's working. It's 8 minutes to go. Dilworth will be desperately hoping that there's 5 laps to go here, just to give himself that extra bit of time.
Well, Chadworth isn't, because he's got then that extra lap of fuel to save. Here comes Joan Rain back into the pit lane. It's not really going to make much of a difference in terms of his race. There's Chris Thacker having an off through the chase. Yeah, into the pit lane as well. Back through he comes. So Ivo van Linden might get himself back up into second place ahead of Marcel Breitenbach and ahead of Chris Thacker. They're not going to spend much time stationary, but is it going to exceed the 22-second mark? There is Chris Chatterton. The gap teetering on the edge of 3 seconds. Dilworth throwing everything at it. But again, it's going to be one thing to catch. It's going to be another thing to pass, especially at a circle like Bathurst, which we've seen before, hasn't really lended itself quite well to people finding their way through.
What a dramatic ending we're having to this race. In the Pro-Am standings, by the way, Marcel Breitenbach and Chris Thacker are on their way out of the pit lane for the final time. And they should hold on to 3rd and 4th respectively. They will. Dean Timms is going to come through the bottom of his shot in a moment, but he's not going to be close enough to overtake Thacker. Not even nearly close enough. There he is. So it should remain all the same in Pro-Am as long as Louis Boubier enters and exits the pit lane within a minute. During his final stop, he will be absolutely fine. The real action is out front, because in Am, we've got more than a minute between 1 and 2. In Pro, it could hardly be any closer. Just over 2 seconds as we ride on board with Dilworth again. Bearing down on Chris Chatterton. In towards Murray's corner. Late as he dares on the brakes. Out over the line again. Chatterton with a 2-minute 3.5. Dilworth responds again with a 2-minute 2.2. It's another 1.3 seconds gained. And it closes up once more. Now, these two are teammates, of course. You can't forget about what happened only 1 week ago between the Prestana Nomad teammates. Is Dilworth going to catch here and maybe just run in formation? Is Chatterton going to return the favour? What are we going to see here? Because Chatterton, of course, is still embroiled in a big championship battle where he would take the championship lead as things stand ahead of Stuart Reynolds.
It just depends how hard of a team player Jason Dilworth wants to play, whether he gives the win to Chris. I mean, we do know that the Prestana Nomad team have, worked quite well together. Chris Chatterton and Jason Dilworth, working quite nicely with each other, and the team dynamic is there, but it's a race victory on the line, and it's coming down to this, and Dilworth doesn't seem like he's slowing down. Maybe he wouldn't push so hard to close the gap if it was the case that he was just going to allow Chatterton to take victory. That's a mistake. Bit of a tap going through the S's and then into the dipper. That's going to cost him a little bit of time. I don't think he's going to damage his car by any means, but the gap is under 2 seconds, and if he's closing the gap that quickly, it doesn't really tell me that he's planning on sitting behind.
You wouldn't think he would take so much risk if he wasn't going to win this one. And as I mentioned, you've got to remember what happened 1 week ago, and the team play that was going on at Prestana Nomad to allow Chatterton the best possible chance at winning this title. John Williams likely now to fall away. Chatterton is their best bet into the chase again towards the final turn. It's been another good lap, another good response from Chatterton here, and he'll extend it to about 2.5 seconds now. Out over the line again, and it's another best lap of the race. a 2 minute 2.8, and for the first time in quite some time, he extends the gap by 0.2 of a second with just over 4 minutes remaining. So Chatterton extends the gap once more, but it's the consistency a little bit that Chatterton's being caught with a little bit, because he is producing these personal bests, but then he slips back into the mid 2 minute 3s again in the next lap, and that cost him a lot of time compared to Dilworth.
Well, indeed, but with time definitely not on Dilworth's side, it is going to be quite tricky for him to close the gap and then overtake if that isn't his intention. So the further we go in, the less opportunities that Dilworth has, and to the delight it is going to be of Chris Chatterton. Dilworth closes the gap once again. He just wants it under 2 seconds. There is Johan Reigns taking a very interesting line, and yet again we're seeing drivers miss the breaking point of the chase. Again, not entirely sure as to what it is, but Johan Reigns really struggling out there.
He is. That gap is all of a sudden miles bigger than it was previously to Carl Pearce. Thought we were going to get some nice battles throughout the race in the AM category, but unfortunately that didn't end up being the case in this race. Oh dear, Hagen Lindmo's not had a good time of things, has he? And it's about to get worse. Out of the chase he goes, into the wall, and that might be the end of Lindmo's day. He's down in 13th place. He might just, 13th overall I should say, he might just park it overall because it's not been his day.
Really hasn't. Same can be said for a lot of people again. So, you look through the timer screens and you just see how many people have been out of position, have not had the best of days. The gap between the two leaders, though, 1.5 seconds. Question remains, though, is this going to be the last lap or is it going to be the penultimate lap? I think they are going to get one extra one, are they not?
I think so. So they cross the line there with 2:10 to go. So with 2:03, 2:02 lap times, we are going to get 2 more out of this. And the gap closes once more. If Dilworth's going for this, that's exactly what he wanted to see. Another 1.1 seconds gain, and exactly what I was saying 1 lap ago here, Zach. He's done it again. Chris Chatterton goes from personal best lap time to a mid 2 minute 3, and it's those 2 minute 3s where he's being caught, because Dilworth is like a robot at the moment, so consistent in the low 2 minute 2s, and he's catching 1.2 seconds between the two of them right now, and there's a lot of pressure on here. Even though they are teammates, there is a lot of pressure on now.
Yeah, absolutely, especially for Chatterton, and it's going to be tough to get the extra 6 kilometers worth of fuel out of the car. They have got the gap back to Stuart Reynolds if they did want to slow down, maybe. I'm not entirely sure. Haken Limo is out of this race, and it comes down to 3. Back out of the pit lane, we're being told. He's back out on the circuit, so he's able to continue on, which is, I guess, good to get some points, but I don't really see a reason why he would.
He's not out of the pit lane. I can still see him in the I think he's out the race by the looks of things. It certainly looks to me as if that's the case anyway. And as you say, why I don't see why he would continue either at this stage, because he'd probably have to soldier on with the damaged car anyway. Speaking of which, Francois Pedro and Jim Breitenbach are still doing that in Pro-Am, by the way. But that means there's only 14 running cars out of 23 that started this race. The most attritional race we've seen in the the IMB World Series League's GT3 Championship here in Season 5. Down towards the chase for the penultimate time. Chris Chatterton holding on to a slender lead at Bathurst. Jason Dilworth cutting it down like you wouldn't believe. In towards the final couple of corners they'll go, and with mere seconds remaining, they're going to see the white flag here. Chatterton with one more time at Mount Panorama to hold on to what would be a famous victory. It's another personal best, a 2 minute 2.5. Dilworth closes in by another 2 tenths. There's a second between them with 6Ks to go.
Absolutely nothing in it. Dilworth, he's got to close the gap. As soon as he's in the slipstream, he's going to be hooked on, but one more lap around Mount Panorama left to go. Dilworth is closing and closing and closing. Has Chatterton got the fuel in order to make it to the end? Is he going to be lifting and coasting all the way around? Who's going to come out on top? 2 vastly different strategies in this race. It's 2 vastly different approaches, and it comes down to the final lap of the race that we very barely got as well. So Chatterton, is that spin?
Dilworth's gone! He was giving it everything into the cutting on the last lap, and Jason Dilworth has spun around and backed it into the wall as well, I think, leaving Chris Chatterton to surely hang on to this. Stuart Reynolds is too far away to get into second place. But if that was ever a viewing as to just how hard Dilworth was pushing, then that is it there into the cutting. He was right on the limit of grip and just went over it on the very last lap.
Absolutely. He was doing so well for so long, as you say, quite a robot in terms of his consistency, like a scale electric car going round and round. We'll take a quick look before we see Chris Chatterton across the line. And again, it was a marginal mistake, but when you're pushing the tyres that hard, he scraped the barrier going in, so close to tapping it on the way through, tap on the brakes again, and it was enough just to spin the car around, which is such a shame for him. But it has been such a good effort from both Chatterton and Dilworth, in all fairness. Both of them arguably deserved it, but it was Chris Chatterton that did the work with the fuel saving and his consistency to now be in a position to quite comfortably take the race victory.
He will indeed. Dilworth a bit lucky there, by the way, that he got bounced facing the right way again, because Stuart Reynolds will remain third. But coming in towards the final couple of corners will be Chris Chatterton. Winner in one of the races at Monza. Winner in the endurance race at Bathurst. Chris Chatterton goes to the championship lead with a win at Mount Panorama. Jason Dilworth wasn't quite able to take it off his teammate, throwing everything at him towards the end. He will finish second, and Stuart Reynolds will come in third, having lost his championship lead here, and he'll trail Chris Chatterton by 8 points, heading into Long Beach in 1 week's time. Not far behind him is Lewis Boubier. It's Carl Pearce who's going to come in first. He is going to be the AM winner here today to just reduce Sam Van Ruler's championship lead just that little bit. He'll move up to second place in the championship ahead of his teammate Jeroen Reigns. And in the Pro-Am standings, it's Lewis Boubier, who was never really challenged today, and he will be another race winner who takes the championship lead today away from Ivo van der Linden this time. He goes over the line, and it's a new championship leader in Pro-Am as well. Lewis Boubier, 5 points in front of Ivo van der Linden after a famous win at Bathurst, and it looks like van der Linden is going to hang on to what is a very good second place in the end.
Yeah, respectable stuff from Ivo van der Linden. It did at some point look like he was only going to manage fourth, but limit the damage, of course, and going into the final 3 rounds, it's going to be a damage limitation that he is probably going to be very, very grateful for. Second place here at Bathurst, and just to get to the checker flag is an achievement in of itself. Breitenbach rounding off the podium, yet another good result for the South African. Jeroen Reigns, second place for him again, doing what he needs to do, I suppose. But Carl Pearce, Jeroen Reigns, that fight for second in the AMS is mightily, mightily impressive, and also maybe with the possibility they can close the gap to Sam Van Ruler as well. I don't know, there's a lot of prospects for the final 3 rounds of Season 5 of the IMB World Series Leagues GT3, and I'm really looking forward to it.
It is a very exciting prospect heading forward into the final 3 weeks. But now though, let's take a look at those race results after 75 minutes of racing. Chris Chatterton holding on ahead of Jason Dilworth. Stuart Reynolds running out the podium. Haki Limbo will score points, and so will KDL. Taylor Lane unfortunately retired very, very early on. In the Pro-Am standings, it was Lewis Boubier ahead of Ivo van der Linden by quite some distance. He held off Marcel Breitenbach on the podium. Chris Stacker will be fourth, with Dean Timms joining him inside the top 5. Thomas Pugh was a lap down. Francois Peugeot and Jean Breitenbach did get to the line, with Timothy van der Broek, Astrid Haddad and Stuart Winers all scoring points. Yes, they will all score points today in that Pro-Am standings. In those Pro-Am standings, I should say. And finally, in AM, it's 51 seconds between Carl Pearce and Jeroen Reigns. Jomas Estemoinen was a lap down. Connor Botting, Archie Lands and Sam Van Ruler will all score no points for their part in today's race. Well, those are your results. Let's bring in our overall race winner, Chris Chatterton, who joins us now. Chris, welcome to the booth once again. Good to have you here on the back of another race win here. It was pretty exciting for us to watch, I have to say, when Jason Dilworth was closing in towards the end there. But were you feeling the pressure there, knowing that it is your teammate, and knowing what happened last week as well? Were you feeling the pressure, or were you fairly relaxed that you were going to win anyway because he is your teammate?
We were racing, so when we gridded up, I said I'm going to go into fuel mode 2 and see if I can make it. And Jason obviously did the opposite, and yeah, we were racing right until the last lap. He had the little spin in the last lap, pushing to try and get into tow for the last run. So no, we were racing. Whether he would have made a move or not, only he could answer that. But we were racing up until that point, yeah.
It's fantastic to hear, and it was very exciting for us indeed. It has now brought you a championship lead as well now, by the way, with that win, and Stuart Reynolds finishing down in 3rd place. How are you feeling about holding on to that championship lead when we head to Long Beach next week?
Well, Long Beach is one of my favourite tracks, and much like Bathurst, it's about avoiding the walls. But look, Stewart's a fantastic driver. He's proven in this league over the seasons, and I've raced against him in other leagues as well. Is one of the fastest guys around, so it's I'm very lucky to even be competing with him. Like last season, he was on another level to me. So whether I can keep this going till the end, I don't know, but with 3 races to go, I'm going to give it my best.
Certainly. We look forward to seeing you again next week, Chris. But for now, congratulations on your win here at Bathurst, and thanks very much for chatting to us.
Yep, and thank you to the team for the setup and the support as always. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thanks very much. Chris Charlton, winner here at Bathurst overall. In Pro-Am, it was Lewis Boubier who was able to take the win by about half a minute in the end. Welcome to the booth, Lewis. Good to have you here once again. We didn't see an awful lot of you, I've got to say, throughout that race. Were you feeling comfortable out there on the mountain tonight?
Comfortable would be an overstatement. I was being kept honest by Timothy for most of the race. I was at 100% concentration. The night time really mixed things up. It was quite difficult to race at night, to have the confidence to go into blind corners flat out, but eventually I got that back and just managed to keep the lead I had and came home nicely.
I was thinking about this a little bit on stream, and you mentioned the darkness there, because the last time, in real life anyway, that level of darkness was raced in at Bathurst, I reckon was probably about 20 years ago. How much racing beforehand, how much practicing beforehand had you done in that level of darkness at Bathurst? Because it really doesn't happen very often.
No, it doesn't. The special events, it gets a little dark, or starts quite dark, but not quite to that level, not pitch black. So there was some practice at that, but mostly it came down to muscle memory, knowing the corners, knowing the throttle inputs that you need to be safe. So it was slower, but it wasn't quite as bad as maybe I was expecting.
And you are now the new championship leader. How do you think, or how are you feeling about holding on to that through at Long Beach next week?
Well, I haven't raced Long Beach ever, so it's a brand new track, being a street circuit with a lot of walls right on the exits every time. It's going to be quite difficult, but I'm confident going into there. I think with a bit of practice I can get up to speed, and then Daytona and Sebring I know quite well, so even if I have a bad Long Beach, then I'm confident going into the final 2 races.
That's good to hear. We look forward to seeing you there, Lewis, but for now, congratulations, and thanks very much for chatting to us.
Excellent. Thanks, guys.
Thanks very much. Lewis Boubier, their winner in Pro-Am. Winner in Am tonight was Carl Pearce, and he joins us now as well. Carl, welcome to the booth as well. Good to have you here. It's a win here for you tonight in the endurance round in the Am category, but would it be fair to say that, I think this is true of all the categories, but especially in Am, it was a bit of a race of survival today? Would that be fair to say?
Oh, 100%. I think you may have caught my moment where I didn't know where to turn left or right or wherever it is. I'm getting my left and right's wrong now. How embarrassing. Yeah, no, it got pitch black. I couldn't even see. It's just like, I know there was a right bend here somewhere, and I was just like, I completely missed it. And yeah, silly me. But yeah, no, it was really good. It was literally about being in survival mode, really. And just keeping the car under control.
I do have to ask a bit further on that incident we did see, by the way. Did you just forget to turn in, or couldn't you see where you were going, or what was going on?
A bit of both. Yeah, I was just in autopilot mode, and I was just chatting with Lewis and Yaron, and I think we were just talking about like what time we wake up in the morning and stuff, and what's our morning routines before we go to work. We were just in that autopilot mode, and yeah, eventually I just forgot that there was a bend there, and I didn't even click. So yeah, silly me.
Well, thankfully you realised before you put it in that tyre wall.
100%. I had to move over to the right. Yeah, it's just like, it was all pitch black and see nothing. So yeah, managed to get the control.
Thankfully you avoided that. Just one last quick one. How are you feeling about Long Beach next week?
Long Beach, yeah. So every time I try to race it with the online lobbies and stuff, it's it's usually quite carnage, especially some hairpins. And what's that? Was it the water fountain bit as well? That usually gets quite bad and full with traffic jams, let's say. Yeah, Long Beach. I have to admit, I'm not really fully confident for it, but I think I really need to spend a lot of time in the next few days, and especially after the weekend, and that to try and get enough time in there and try and survive that as well. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes and go from there, really.
Absolutely. We look forward to seeing you there. Carl, congratulations
Thank
on the
you
win
very
tonight,
much.
and thanks for chatting to us.
Cheers.
Thanks very much, Carl Pearce there. First place in AM, just ahead of Jerome Rains, who also joins us now. Jerome, welcome as well. Second place in this one. I just mentioned to Carl that it was a bit of a race of survival today. And in the end, you did survive for second place. How did you find your night at Bathurst tonight?
Yeah, indeed. It was everything about surviving this race. It's not my strongest track either. Yeah, me and Carl had a nice run at the first half of the race, and just trying to battle him a bit. And then I just had a little contact with the wall. Luckily, no major damage, and I kind of just coasted the whole race, let me say. Yeah, it's a bit of a shame that we have a small grid today, and it's getting smaller since last race as well. So I hope we can get bigger field and more competitiveness in this season. Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully so, and that will be well, useful, maybe not useful, at Long Beach next week. Are we going to see you there, Your So I presume we are, and how are you feeling going into that one?
Yeah, I've never raced at Long Beach, so it's gonna be quite a challenge. But yeah, let's hope that it's gonna all gonna go well. We'll see.
Let's hope so. We look forward to seeing you there, Your But for now, congratulations on second, and thanks for chatting to us as well.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks very much, Jerome Rains there. Second place in the AM standings here tonight at Bathurst. Well, that is just about going to do it for us here tonight, Zach, at Bathurst. It's been a bit of a step into the unknown for quite a few. It sounds like for a lot of people, though, next week is going to be a step into the unknown as well.
Yeah, we only had, I think, one of the bunch actually say, "Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to Long Beach." The rest were like, "I'm a bit skeptical. I'm not really. Yeah, it's a bit dodgy. But I'm sure it's going to be a great race nonetheless. Definitely another one of attrition. The last chance they've got to take their drop rounds as well. So if you're going to mess up, do it next week, I suppose. But the prospects in terms of the championship, how competitive it all is as well, it's all raveled into one very, very good and very, very tasty last few rounds of what has really been one of the best seasons that we've had the pleasure of doing for World Series.
It's been very, very close indeed, and it's set to get even closer as we head towards the streets of Long Beach, the west coast of the US, to round off our triple header in America for our season. But for now, that's going to do us here for the broadcast here tonight. Don't forget, later on, the US Series will be racing at the Nordschleife for their endurance round. Here in this one, they didn't take it on for their opener like we did, so you can enjoy some Nordschleife racing in the build-up to the Nürburgring 24 hours here on Wednesday night, a little bit later on. That's coming up in a few hours' time. So make sure you stick around for that, or indeed come back next week when we'll be back on the air. But for now, that's going to do it for us. I've been Ewan O'Leary alongside Zach Sweeney, and until we see you in 1 week's time at Long Beach, it's goodbye for now.
lag, arm,